What's good? What's good? I still don't know what I'm going to title this video because there's kind of like 2 points I want to make. The first one, I just want to do my best Tim Pool impression. If you do not know who Tim Pool is, he is an independent media creator who has built quite of an alternative empire to the mainstream. He's a character. I'm a character. And so I can appreciate his efforts to an extent, for sure. But he's a meme-worthy character. That's part of his persona, is that there are a lot of different sort of memes and narratives around him. One of them being, he often references Civil War! Okay, that was not a good impression. Okay, let me try again. Civil War! Nope. I'm not a good impersonator. Civil War! That was a little closer. Anyways, I don't know how I feel about Tim, ultimately. He has reached the point where he definitely has met handlers and has interacted with handlers. And so I don't know how he has been manipulated and how authentic he has remained. It's tough because once you get to a certain point, whether you know it or not, you're being influenced. And so that's sort of the greater point, is that the people he has interacted with may have had ulterior motives. And I do think he is generally bright enough to combat this. It's still a concern. Were I ever to reach any prominence, I would have the same concern about like trusting the authenticity of people, because so many people are agents and operatives. It's tough. Anyways, okay. Why is Civil War relevant? Well, because we're getting close. We are getting close. If you're not familiar, there is this movement growing called the Lonestar Rebellion, which I gotta admit, kind of cool, kind of badass. I don't love the conservatives, but I hate the commies. So, the enemy of my enemy can temporarily be my ally. That is why I generally am less critical of them. But because of all of the immigration issues we're experiencing at the border, Texas is defying federal legislation, federal mandates, and have decided to essentially go live. They said they're willing and prepared to defend their borders. And I really hope, and I said in my last video, that it doesn't go hot, meaning rounds are not exchanged, ammo is not exchanged, nothing happens. But it could. And I don't think Tim is wrong for talking about Civil War all the time, because it's been fomenting for decades. The Marxists have been useful idiots for the elites. Marxist is a very, very, very broad term, because under the umbrella of Marxism, there are so many different ideologies that have stemmed from his general thought that there should be a collective authoritarian state that administers society. People call it different names, and they try to pseudo-intellectualize and justify their version and their change to make it work, but they're all freaking idiots. That is why there is such a hatred for the intellectual class, because they are up in the clouds, living in theory, ignoring reality. And that is why, apparently, there are trucker convoys heading to Texas right now. That is why, over the last few years, it has been the truckers and the blue-collar workers who have been leading the real charge against the establishment. The revolutionary leftists have just decided to join the establishment, which I don't get, but I do at the same time because they've been brainwashed, which I do get. I would have more respect for revolutionary leftists if they weren't such idiots. But you are. You all are idiots. Okay, anyways, let's get back on point. So the truckers, blue-collar workers, the real working class, not the intellectual conception of the working class, which, in a sense, is kind of a form of classism or bigotry. That's also why there's a hatred for the intellectual class. Because it's like they're so condescending. We know better than you. We're smarter than you. And that permeates from the top down, and they feel that. Intellectuals really are just annoying people. Anyway, I'm really rambling. Let's get back on focus. A lot of states have also declared that they will support Texas, and it's very much, the lines are different than the Civil War, but it's still interesting. There's some overlap, and lines are being drawn. And the elites, they don't care if people die. They really do not care. That's the thing. The people at the top do not value human life. That's why they're doing what they do. The people at the bottom really value human life, and not just their own in a selfish, narcissistic, egomaniacal sort of way like the elites have. The elites do value their own human life, so much so that they have become sociopathic. Whereas farmers who understand that they feed the world, they truly value human life. And if they have that Christian sort of background, it's a life of service. Whereas the elites live a life of selfishness. Selfishness. I just have so much respect for working class people. Partially because I'm in the working class, I feel like. But I also, for a little bit, had a corporate job and was, affluent maybe. But through conversation, through dialogue, through communication, we can prevent violence. And that should ultimately be our objective, especially if it is unnecessary violence of innocent people against innocent people. I'm not entirely against violence. I think that it should be a solution for some of these sociopaths. But I am against violence being used as a tool to manipulate innocent civilians, which is what is happening right now. And I was thinking about this the other day, or I think about this often. I was trying to put myself in the various positions of people engaged in this conflict. And so I was like, there are, let's just say, 30-year-old men being transported, being human trafficked, essentially, as a pawn in a greater globalist game. Globalist is not an anti-Semitic term. That is a CIA psychological operation, PSYOP, to get people to stop using that word because they don't want us uniting against the elites. So the globalists are literally trafficking humans. And if you're a 30-year-old male from Mexico who looks around his community and doesn't see a lot of opportunity, sure, you might go along for an adventure because it's better than the shit you're dealing with in your little community where there's no opportunity, there's no sense of life. And so I can see how easily these people could allow themselves to be trafficked because at least it's an opportunity. Almost like, going on a pirate ship back in the day. It was an adventure. Morality kind of gets really gray. And so I do have compassion for the 30-year-old immigrant who is being trafficked somewhat against his will, but also somewhat allowing it. Because the corrupt government of Mexico has destroyed the country and there's no opportunity there. And all these other countries where we're getting immigrants from, the elites have destroyed their countries. And so they're seeking adventure and opportunity and just something other than the dark hole of seeing their community destroyed by their leaders. And then if you could propagandize them into saying it's the West's fault, well then, you have willing warriors for your conquer and control efforts. And then let's put ourselves in the shoes of, you know, army soldiers who are having to potentially raise their weapons against other versions of army soldiers, American army soldiers. It must be just a really, really tough time. It is a tough time for everyone. And if you look at my videos, it's all because of the government and the ruling class. They are manipulating material reality. And they're using your minds, they're using your bodies, they are using your lives to do so. In Civil War, World War III, it can all be avoided if we can just have these conversations. But that means you have to stop being manipulated by the media narratives. Yeah, that's you. And I was gonna say, I'll be nicer. You revolutionary leftists. Let's have some real conversations, people, because this violence can be avoided. Much love.